Good morning, everybody. I'm Karen Watson. We're actually going to lose Kremlin after about 5 minutes because has another commitment. Julianne Williams will take his place on the panel. So we're going to hear from Kremlin first. Kremlin is going to share about the work of WHO in the area of unhealthy food marketing to children. He's the acting head of the WHO European Office for the Prevention and Control of Non-Communicable Diseases based in Moscow. It's an integral part of the Division of Country Health Programs, and he's the WHO Regional Office for Europe. He also leads the Nutrition and Physical Activity and Obesity Program. He's going to talk about the work of WHO on unhealthy marketing to children, marketing of food to children, and talk about some of the challenges of digital marketing in particular, I hope, because that's where some of the recent challenges are.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, thank you, and apologies. We were going to travel to Slovenia, but when the diaries got cleared, meetings keeps coming in. I'm sorry, I will have to leave in 15 minutes. I'm here until the next hour. That's also because of another new conference that's coming related to digital solutions to tackle NCDs. WHO is organizing a new conference on 14, 15 December. And those who are from countries, member states would have received a letter from WHO about nominations and also to write what you are doing innovatively in this space to let WHO know. And that includes NCD prevention, like what we are doing now, tackling HFSS marketing in this conference. So I have a meeting about that conference, which will be hosted by our regional director and the Minister of Health Russia, but with many other ministers from our region. With that in mind, I know with Amanjin and all the colleagues you have here, Maria Joao, you will hear more about the traditional work and the work that we are doing to tackle digital marketing and the challenges. Particularly, I want to talk about two things. One is about the monitoring, because countries have told us that they have some support from the minister, they are ready to look at it, but without a good monitoring system, politicians are not ready to go to the parliament to strengthen legislation. So one issue is that to focus more and improve our knowledge and technology and feasibility and confidence about monitoring digital marketing. And the second point I want to make is, I know with social media, we are trying to catch up, right? And the social media exploded and we are trying to do something, but still it's not right. We are trying to catch up with after the train is gone, how to tackle social media. But we really want to make sure now we focus on the gaming. We had a conference, conference and a webinar this week about video gaming and NCDs. Some of you might have joined. And which countries like Denmark tell us 95% of the young children use games as their routine way of communicating with peers. So they are not texting, they are not WhatsApp, they communicate with friends through game, and they stream games on YouTube. And that also we see now companies really inviting celebrities. I don't know, the statistics are 2 billion people are active gamers, and the proportion is very high in the WHO European region. Especially younger population, and now companies are inviting these celebrities, gaming celebrities, to games where children can come and play with them, and while playing, ordering junk food as part of the game. I'll put you this video on the chat later. You can watch it. It is how Burger King invited professional gamers and for children to come and order while there. So that's the challenge we have. Maybe I'll play 30 seconds actually if I can, then while we are watching. I hope you can. Do you see my screen? No.
Yes, I think we see it.
Yeah, you're seeing the video that I'm going to
No, not the video though. Okay, there we see it.
There is no audio.
There's no audio because, as I found out yesterday, you have to share your audio when you play in Zoom, you have to share the media and audio, but I think we're getting the picture. Wow. Hmm. So this is what in the industry they call a collab between PlayStation and Burger King. Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Yeah, I hope you can hear. So that's the challenge. So what I would say is let's not be confident that we are tackling everything, but also look for the future and start talking about them. And we know that with the metaverse, what they are talking about is new architecture, but there's a time for us to put our voice. We know which companies are leading the metaverse discussion, like Facebook, very video games, and they are in your countries. So my proposal is before they come out with the whole architecture of metaverse, the national government should invite these companies and say, we don't want to repeat what we missed in social media. We want this to play in with our national rules. Age verification should be there. Children should be protected from, they will be protected from marketing. Right from the beginning, put our public health demands while they are developing and defining what metaverse is and where the future is. So that's my two kind of key messages for you, Karen, I think, to think for the future while we work and improving our current knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kremlin. But speaking of the rights of the child, I'd like to go to Amandine Gard to talk a little bit about how this work all can intersect with the rights of the child and trade in particular as well, when we're talking about media and digital, which transcends boundaries.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me to speak on this panel. So the EU has recognized child obesity and food marketing more specifically as raising children's rights concerns, both in the EU Council presidency conclusions of Malta and Bulgaria in 2017 and 2018 respectively, and in the EU Children's Rights Strategy published in March this year. So your question, Karen, is indeed very timely. So let me start by telling you what a children's rights-based approach is not. It is not a mere rhetorical tool intended to serve corporate interests to the detriment of the best interest of the child and society more largely. By contrast, a children's rights approach places legally binding obligations on states acting individually or collectively as EU member states to respect, protect, and fulfill the inalienable right of each and every child to a healthy food environment free from harmful commercial marketing. So the evidence is clear. Firstly, it is unequivocal that food marketing negatively affects children's food preferences, purchase requests, and ultimately their diets. Secondly, it is similarly established that self-regulation has failed to significantly limit children's exposure to unhealthy food marketing. And thirdly, the growing research on the commercial determinants of health strengthens the call for a radically different approach to address childhood obesity and food marketing. So a children's rights approach mandates that the EU should act in line with this evidence base. In particular, it requires that it should stop relying on a dogmatic, unfounded belief in the virtues of self-regulation and codes of conduct. It also requires that the EU and its member states work together to address all forms of unhealthy food marketing. We know that comprehensive approaches beyond those relating to the Audiovisual Media Services Directive, these comprehensive approaches are the only ones likely to prevent marketing investment from shifting from regulated to unregulated media, from regulated to unregulated marketing techniques, and from regulated to unregulated settings. So rights are not an option. This is what a child rights-based approach tells us. They are an inalienable entitlement which all of us as rights holders have and which states as duty bearers must protect. And this unavoidably requires the effective regulation of unhealthy food marketing, not the investment of millions of euros of taxpayers' money in the gathering of evidence, which we already have, and the exchange of best practices, of which there is so little to share. As those of you who have worked with me over the years very well know, I've never engaged in criticism just for criticism's sake, and I've always tried to reflect on possible ways forward. And I think the potential of a child rights-based approach is indeed very significant. So together with the European Public Health Alliance and 19 others pan-EU federations of public health, consumer and children's rights organizations, we have actually done the work we wish the European Commission had done many years ago. Kremlin has referred to my work as traditional. I guess if this means that I believe in the power of effective legal instruments to promote societal change, yes, then I agree. My work is very traditional indeed. So we launched a call for action and the draft EU Food Marketing Directive last week. It's all published on IFA's website if you haven't seen it. The drafting process was driven by evidence and the imperative to uphold the best interest of the child as a primary consideration. And this is the text that we should be discussing in 2021. But to conclude, evidence, of which once again there is plenty, will never replace political will. And galvanizing political will requires courage and coordination, not baby steps and revolving doors. So I urge all of us to work together to muster the vision, power, and strategies for a better, healthier, and more sustainable future for our children. Again, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Amandine, for that very strong presentation. Lubos, I would like to come to you next as Director of the European Platform of Regulatory Authorities. Can you talk a little bit about what EPRA's been developing in the area of food marketing, and how what Amandine just said intersects with what you do, and the challenges of enforcing this just from a regulatory point of view?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me here for this important meeting. And of course, I will gladly talk about this, because I think, the coordination in this area is extremely important. And I would say that specifically because I see the problem of HFSS advertising a bit underserved from the point of view of regulatory authorities in media. And this is not because we are not talking about it a lot, because we do. And in the past, we had a lot of meetings where we talked about these things. Just, I think, on the hierarchy of problems that the media regulators are trying to solve, this is a bit lower. And I would say that it may be also because you always need to cooperate with somebody. You need health experts to talk to you about these things. So I think on the international level, the coordination hasn't been that developed as it should. Now, I'm saying this because we already are trying to remedy this. I've, for example, already had a meeting with the WHO earlier this year, where we talked about cooperation between EPRA as a coordinating body among the regulators in Europe, and it is in wider Europe, it's not EU, and WHO in this area. And we also were trying to how to develop some kind of coordinating mechanisms that we can use for these purposes. It is clear that there are are members that are working very intensely in this area, and I would say Ireland as an outlier in this area, for example. I know that Nordic countries having these kind of things, but only because the problem that we are now trying to solve is global, and the companies that are vectors of the problematic content, so to say, are also global. The next level of coordination is needed, and I would say that currently, as the legislation is standing in this area, I'm sorry, my kids are trying to intervene. Sorry for that. In this area has been very light. You know, the AVMSD in its old version that is still currently being applied in the majority of the member states has very light kind of touch on the AVHS food. It is just encouraging the regulators to encourage the providers to do something about it. Now we have a new version of MMSD that is more strong on this. There is a calling for ideally co-regulation in this area. So I think with the implementation of the MMSD that is currently rolling out, we will see more and more stronger rules being applied. And I know, and I've heard Amandine talking about this, and I know that probably even this might not be enough in this area, but that's why again we need more coordination, and that we can see that where the problems are the most prevalent, we can also take the best practices of the others on board. But I would also mention that we have now DSA, Digital Services Act, coming, because the MMSD is only dealing with broadcasters, then on-demand services like Netflix, for example. But the new version is also aiming at video sharing platforms. Now, video sharing platforms are, you can think about YouTube, for example, TikTok, or video on Facebook. So it is about video content. But we know, and we've heard from Kremlin earlier, that this is not the only problem. So we have to be more holistic in this approach to different platforms. And I think the DSA may be a way to do that. Although, again, it is only by way of codes of conduct that are written now in the DSA that this may be applied. But I think it will be, it needs to be stronger on child protection. And although the food problems, the food advertising, AVHSS is not explicitly mentioned in the proposal for the DSA, the children rights are, and the children or harmful content aimed at children is. So probably this is a way how to get in to that in a more legislative way, so to say. So, but I would just say now that I think that what Maria, for example, was proposing, I think that I don't know about regulators being media regulators being part of that, but I think maybe there should be kind of coordination also with us. So I would say either via European Commission or directly, we can, I think, get into contact and try to give media regulators a kind of, at least the knowledge about what is going on and how to use it in practice. And what I said with our coordination with WHO and with Kremlin himself, we are now trying to do something about, getting media regulators to know much more about these things and how to really get that expertise of health experts on board in this, so we can actually use this expertise and learn from them. So I think the coordination, I hope the coordination will increase, and definitely EPRA is absolutely ready to help in that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Julianne in a minute, but I have a question about Ireland and the Nordic countries. Is it because the political will is greater in those countries? And then also, Maria, for you, the question of whether or not your intersectoral work includes the kind of work that Lubos is doing and the regulatory authorities, the regulatory authorities generally. So Lubos first, please.
Thank you. Well, I can't say directly to how the political will is, what's happening in those countries. What I would say is that I think the industry itself is have a higher level of engagement in these areas, because all these things that we are talking about are driven by sub-regulatory or co-regulatory frameworks. And for that, you need a real engagement from the industry. And you see that in Nordic countries quite a lot. And of course, in Ireland would be probably the same situation. Of course, it is helped by very active media regulators that are encouraging this to happen and are creating the frameworks for doing that. And because media regulators are usually good at these kind of network creating engagements. So I think this is where they are very good. The media regulators are very good at. So probably these would be reasons.
Maria?
Yes, thank you for the question. We totally agree with the need to improve the collaboration and to have a coordinated approach for this area. Of course, the media regulators are very important in this field. And actually, we are trying to improve this cooperation and collaboration by the intersectoral expert groups that we are creating under the scope of this joint action.
Thank you. Julianne, thank you for joining this panel at the last minute. Yesterday, Francesco talked a little bit about working with Google Analytics and some of the challenges that WHO has faced. He just alluded to it really, but I'm wondering if you could give more insight into that, since Google is also owns YouTube, which is a major vehicle for digital marketing right now.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Nice to see you, and good afternoon, dear colleagues. Really nice to be part of this panel. I think what we are finding is just the complexity of the digital sphere. In this video game meeting that we had on Monday and Tuesday, we had an expert come and kind of explain to us this concept of the metaverse, which was very scary for me to hear about. I think it gets quite difficult to even understand how these advertisements are organized, how companies use them, how they go from Google to third parties. And understanding it, I think, is complicated. Identifying the entry points is even more complicated. There were questions about why we sort of focused on this video game issue lately. And as some of you may know, we have at WHO the European Program of Work, which outlines our priorities for the next 5 years. And our regional director has identified some what he calls signature initiatives. So areas where we are really concentrating our efforts, including behavioral and cultural insights, mental health. One of those is digital health. And one thing we're finding is that digital health is a term that means many things to many different people. And we're trying to really understand the various dimensions of this. We have in WHO something called the NCD Council, where we have some experts from across Europe to kind of help us identify the best way to address non-communicable diseases, including obesity. And they're the ones that kind of said video games are something we need to look at. So that was sort of the driver of this meeting. It was a very early stages meeting where we brought together experts from research. We had clinicians, we had even a few people from industry who had declared their interests beforehand and were there in individual capacity. While we're talking about protecting children, though, in the digital space, one of the other issues I thought we might at least mention is the issue of breast milk substitute marketing. We know that obesity can be prevented if babies are breastfed. And what we're seeing is that the breast milk substitute industry is increasingly using some of these digital tools to target families. And as we work to protect the vulnerable, ensure that nobody's left behind, this is another area where we need to think about the marketing of products online. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you. Amandine, before we open it up to questions, I've heard a couple of your very brilliant lectures, and I'd like you just briefly to talk about where what the broadcasters would call the rights of free speech intersect with the rights of the child.
Yes, I'm going to answer your question. It's a very interesting one again. But when we talk about coordination, there's one thing. And as everybody knows, I speak as an independent academic. So I can say what I believe is important to be said. And I'm sorry if it's controversial. But if we want the EU to move forward on this, we must ensure that the food marketing dossier is in the hands of the DG Health, Santé, and not in the hands of DG Connect, which in my view has consistently torpedoed any chances of meaningful progress in this area. And that's why we're stuck with the AVMSD and have been for 15 years. So on your question of free speech, yes, the right to health, the right to nutritious food, and many socioeconomic rights are not absolute. Therefore, there is a balancing between, on the one hand, the right to health, the right to food, and on the other, the right to free speech invoked by commercial marketeers that want to claim that advertising informs rather than misinforms, or also the right to intellectual property. The logic is the same. When you touch the brand, you're touching the intellectual property. But when you balance, you must bear in mind the extent of the harm that certain practices entail, and you must bear in mind that proportionality requires that you deploy the means that are legitimate to achieve the objective pursued. And here the objective pursued is the protection of children and their rights from harmful marketing. And this balancing exercise must take place bearing in mind the best interest of the child principle as a primary consideration. And this best interest principle of the child, I've written, my last piece was specifically on this, and I'm using the right to free speech. So very happy to send you the written piece. But the point to the question is balancing doesn't mean that everything is equal. It means that you must deploy the means required to address a specific problem effectively.
Thank you. Maria, briefly, do you want to comment on what you've heard so far as I go and look at the questions in the chat?
Thank you so much, Karen, to give me the opportunity to comment on that. Unfortunately, I think that it's quite clear that children around the world remain exposed to high levels of unhealthy food marketing, and that digital marketing imposes a lot of new challenges in this field. So I think more than ever, we need to adopt and implement more effective restrictions on marketing of unhealthy food to children. Nevertheless, maybe there are some reasons to have some optimism. We have now a growing number of useful, practical and digital tools that are now available to facilitate the implementation of actions in this field. WHO is doing a very good job in developing innovative tools to help countries to be more effective to reduce the children exposure to food marketing. Another point that I would like to stress out, considering this optimistic point of view, is the adoption of a child rights-based approach to food marketing, following the very strong presentation of Professor Amandine. I believe that it could be a huge opportunity to move forward as this adoption might increase the political will. I hope so. And it's also important to note that more and more countries are recently implement some government-led restrictions on food marketing. We have the examples of UK and Spain also, and it was also really interesting to hear Lubus sharing the perspective of the media regulatory authorities, and it is really important to increase the cooperation between the different stakeholders, and also the media regulatory authorities are for as central partners. So I believe that the Best-ReMaP will also give an important contribution to drive the policy agenda to protect children from unhealthy food marketing at the EU level. And I will stop here. Thank you, Karen.
I think we're about out of time, but I did see Ursula turn on her camera very briefly, as if she wanted to ask a question or comment. So Ursula, yeah, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to, if you wanted to say something, and turn your camera back on. Because I know of all the work you've done in this area.
Sorry.
That's okay. We can hear you. Yeah.
I'm trying. Yeah, I am trying to get back on, but it won't let me. Yeah, we have since 2009 actually been working in this area, and it was our Minister for Communications who was very strong about this in connection with health in relation to children's advertising. So we have had a children's code since 2013, which has had a number of strong rules, like, for example, you can't use celebrities, or you can't have giveaway toys or things like that for children, to encourage the parents to buy, or them to get their parents to buy particular foods. And then we have in 2019, we've developed codes of marketing, and we're working, as Marie Joao said, we're working with the member states now to actually help support them in developing codes of marketing as well. And we're doing guidance for the food industry on this, because they need guidance in order to know what the codes mean, which is interesting. But and we're going to have a workshop in early March.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moika, back to you. Thank you very much to the panelists. This has been a very important topic and interesting discussion. Thank you all for participating.